Good morning once again, everybody. We are going to talk about one of those more sensitive topics. So, before we get started, the following is product of personal opinion only, does not represent Space Consulting LLC, any of its members, employees. You know the deal. For entertainment purposes only, and once again, personal opinion. Okay, let's get started. You can delete entire populations if you control the information through mass hypnosis. Now, I've floated the idea a couple of times that essentially, how do I put this? I'm of the belief that we inadvertently hypnotize each other every single day. Every single thing we do, well, maybe not every word we say, but we unintentionally hypnotize each other. All right. Now, a certain part of hypnotism is tied to splitting the conscious and subconscious, where you flood one with information versus the other, or you essentially clog up the conscious mind so you can start pumping things into the subconscious mind and, essentially subtext, intentionally, just like a Freudian slip almost. You just scatter Freudian type slips into a sentence as you're talking to people and it makes no sense, but they write it off as a mistake, or, you just fucking up, slip the tongue. Meanwhile, while you're paying attention to the top level, whatever that slip up was is going straight to the subconscious. All right. And it's triggering cascades as the subconscious begins to process that. The human mind can only, at least the conscious mind, can only handle, uh, oh God, I forget the number, but I'm pretty sure it's sub 1 gigabyte of information. Let me double check that. How much data can the conscious mind process? Process and hold. Uh, Estimated roughly 40 to 50 bits a second, or as low as 10 to 12 bits per second, according to Caltech. Well, maybe if you guys weren't stoned all the time, that might explain it. Anyway, the conscious mind can only process and handle a relatively low amount of information. Everything else gets dumped into the subconscious and gets processed without you knowing. The majority of your conscious action is tied to subconscious programming, modulation, and interaction. Anyway, back to the point. So, it was previously referred to as mass hysteria, and most people have heard that. Most people don't necessarily know where that's from, but it was more or less renamed recently to the term mass psychogenic illness. All right, and tied to it, mass sociogenic illness is the process where it spreads through social networks and observation. All right, the illusion of contagion overall is backed by the opposite of the placebo effect, the nocebo effect. Once again, perception controls reality, at least to a very significant extent. All right. We have, if we go based off of what we know, essentially we have decided to agree to the current state of the simulation as it is, even though there is more than enough evidence coming out to show that we can, in fact, alter our conscious reality. It's a question of spreading the ideas, spreading the knowing to everybody to shift into a new way of looking at things. You could say it's a very woo-woo subject, but anyway. This is tied to things like the dancing plague, to Windsor encephalitis. That goes back to a bunch of people acting nauseous and sick and headachy over a non existent gas leak. All right. But there's probably more to that. I didn't have a tremendous amount of time to research all of it, but everybody knows the dancing plague, all right? If you have paid attention to any of like medieval history, any of that, it comes up almost guaranteed every single time. And then there's also the outbreak of twitching that largely started. Now, I don't know if this is a legitimate one, but we can call it legitimate. Back when I want to say it was back when TikTok first came out onto the scene, and kids' brains were getting fucked up by constant short form content, and somebody twitching turned into multiple people twitching, turned into more people twitching. Again, it could be real, could be bullshit. I'm not particularly sure, and I'm not going to dedicate the time to figure out if that's true or bullshit. Best example is the dancing plague. Anyway, the nocebo effect, working opposite from the placebo effect, it will make you feel sick. You will naturally feel sick seeing somebody else get sick because you expect to. All right. It's not just perception, though. There's more to it because seeing somebody get sick also triggers a fight or flight at the immune level of the nervous system because the nervous system is tied to the immune system. All right. So it will create legitimate symptoms. But tied to that, those real symptoms, forward guidance, forward expecting to get sick, those symptoms from that and the adjustments can also lead to weaknesses that allow other unrelated viruses and their realer symptoms to essentially crash the party. All right, there's nothing worse than the idea of you're trying to avoid getting sick. All right, generally around winter, you try to avoid getting sick. You see somebody getting sick. If the nocebo effect kicks in and you get the underlayer fight or flight, and the central nervous system, your nervous system triggers your immune system, and your immune system starts dedicating resources into places that it shouldn't necessarily be doing yet because you haven't actually gotten sick. But of course, it's trying to get evolutionarily, it's most likely because it's trying to get the jump on the virus. So it's already in place, it's already got entrenchment and batteries and field artillery in place before the virus actually kicks in. But meanwhile, whilst the Germans are watching the wrong part of the Atlantic Wall, all right, next thing you know, a different virus, instead of a cold or, a general flu, you end up getting a stomach bug because your body's so focused waiting for the expected sickness that another one just slips in under the fences down south in Normandy. And next thing you know, you're sick with something else, an unrelated virus, and you get the real symptoms, and it creates problems. Now, focusing back on the idea of hypnotizing the population is essentially triggering mass hysteria that doesn't just spread in person but through the internet online. Think about 2020. Now, I'm not particularly saying that, the event was true or false, all right? I'm just here to present the idea to you to get you thinking about things. Think about 2020. What was some of the first things that we saw coming out of a certain country with a red flag? Okay. We saw videos of people falling over in the streets, on the subways, just down like that. All right. Now, given, did the virus specifically attack Asian individuals more roughly, more harshly than it did other populations? Yeah. Is it entirely possible that those videos were 100% true and to be believed? Yeah, most people did believe them. Okay. Even me, I'm no different. I was Learning and education is a process of evolving, and it happens at different speeds. I personally was not particularly ready for the idea that a system that we have propped up most of our lives would potentially be interested in actually going through and trying to play population deletion. Anyway, anyway, if you expect to get sick, you'll more than likely get sick. If you think you're gonna drop from the plague or the cure, if everybody remembers the certain liquid medicine that was cranked out after warp speed. If you think either the plague or the quote unquote cure is going to drop you, there's a much higher likelihood that it will. This is a thing. The standard placebo effect has been shown in certain cases to reverse the big C. All right. The nocebo effect, on the other hand, can, based on the same understanding, just equal opposites, can have the equal opposite effect. It is very important to maintain a reasonable awareness without potentially contaminating your conscious and unconscious mind. Because if 2020, regardless of what 2020 was, there was quite a lot of data generated from that. And part of that data is, if it was in fact questionable, part of the problem is they know it works now. They know that it is entirely possible. They, the big they, know that it is entirely possible to mass hypnotize a population, to make them believe that they're going to get sick, get them sick, and possibly even delete them by releasing enough information of the new next best worst thing ever. And if you hammer that information, if you hammer that data into people's brains, if you just clog up the airwaves, push everything out, every counter narrative out of the way, and you just mainline people with a narrative that, oh my God, another thing was released and people are dropping dead everywhere. All right. And you start cranking up the media hype, you start cranking out videos. I mean, we have AI, we can totally artificially generate some bullshit. All right. And I'm not talking about the AI that you and I have access to. I mean, the AI that certain people have access to that is significantly better. Okay? This is important shit here. Increasingly, people don't know if information is real, honest, and legit or completely fake. All right. The difficulty in trying to figure out what's real and what's not has only increased. Dave Collum, for example, when he talks about anything really, he tends to bring up the fact that there's so much static now that it is absolutely impossible, or it's becoming more impossible, to figure out what's actually going on anymore. This is the thing. It's problematic. The only thing that you know for sure is if the static disappears and all you hear is one message, be incredibly fucking suspicious of that one message. When everybody starts singing a common tune, when it comes to mainstream media, quote unquote professional publications, when they all start saying the same thing, There's some bullshit starting up. Okay. Honestly, disinformation, the fact that there is all this static and disinformation is probably the most reassuring part of anything. Because if everything strikes to the same chord, all right, shit's about to go down. All right. Regardless, I'm going to end it here. These are just nuggets for you to think. I don't expect you to take sides or to, cast dispersion. I don't know. You can think whatever you want to. Take this however you want to. But what I will say, what I will reiterate is once again, for informational purposes only. Oh God, no. For entertainment purposes only. Freudian slip, there it is. For entertainment purposes only. I'll see you guys next time. Stop by the site www.spadesconsulting.com without the dash if you're interested in professional or business advice. And if you appreciate the video, like, favorite, sub, share, ring the bell, ding the bell, do all the things to your heart's content to the bell. Leave a comment, hype it. And I'll see you guys next time. You have a good one.